It's the dance time when we start to go live. So, well, hello, and welcome to Intercultural Spark. This is the show about the spark inside you that drives you to spark change in the world with your business and with everything that you have in your power to bring change to the world. So, I am your host, Deanna Shas, and welcome to Intercultural. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I am thrilled to welcome Walter Lucky Church Simons back to the show to talk about intercultural and interracial relationships as a model for better public discourse and less prejudice in the world. So if you're not familiar with Lucky, that could be by design. So he is an entertainment manager, image consultant, and authentic super connector who most often works behind the scenes in celebrity life. So he calls CeeLo Green and Billy Porter close friends. He's worked with brands like the Grammys, Nike, DJ Khaled, and more. So welcome to the show, Lucky Church.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hi. Good morning. So good to see you. How's your day going so far?
It's been a really eventful day. I've been up since about 5 a.m. So I've been on calls all morning.
Wow.
We have a couple big projects coming in, but it's been a wonderful, wonderful day. And I was so looking forward to this time to spend with you. So thank you for always having me on your show.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. And we have a really important topic to talk about today. And we actually have a special guest coming on midway through the show who will make sure that one of us is honest about how we act in intercultural relationships. So I firmly believe, I know, Lucky, your wife, Vieng, you've been together 25 years. You are clearly Black. She is from Laos. I've been with my husband. Sorry. Oh my God. We should have talked about that before the show. Yes. I'm sorry to be the first one to tell you. Too funny. So we connect on this. So I also am an intercultural, interfaith relationship. My husband, Gino, is from Brazil. I'm Jewish. He's not. So we have all kinds of inter stuff going on.
Wow.
I actually think that a lot of what we have to navigate in our day-to-day relationships to make them work could be a really good model for just people in the world who are, well, we hope they are trying to be less prejudiced, less racist, all those kinds of things.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. Especially, this May 25th of this year, which is in about a week or so, we'll be 25 years together. And
congratulations.
Thank you so much. And a lot of people come to us and look at us as if we have the perfect recipe because we've been together so long. And it's not that I would say we have the perfect recipe. I say we have more of an understanding. And through the years, we've learned to communicate better. Because I think a lot of people walk into relationships and kind of just expect the other person to kind of know based on loving, you love me, so you should know. And that's really not how things work. I don't think they take certain things into consideration as far as cultural differences, the background of the person, how they grew up, their experiences, what they've been through in life. And those are things early in my relationship. I still don't understand how I was wise enough to see these things. I think it's literally just a blessing. But I'll go into some of those stories as we get into the conversation. But early in our relationship, it was very, very difficult for us to share our love with each other. But I knew if it was going to work, I had to learn to understand her and dig deeper into who she was and who her family was before I could just judge them.
Well, and I wonder how you went about that understanding. I know in our relationships, we had a literal language difference. So I'm a firm believer if your partner speaks a different language, like language is so tied to culture that to me, it's really important. So I went about, read literature by Brazilian authors. I learned Portuguese, but still, the whole idea of the word love in the US, if you're both American, when you say I love you, you assume you're saying the same thing. When
Yes.
there's a language difference, if my husband said love, like he's translating the word amor, and that has different cultural intonations. So you have to kind of dig a little bit deeper to understand meaning.
And I'm so glad you said that. And I'm going to pinpoint something in my life personally early in our relationship that was a cultural difference that I mistook as something that she was disrespecting me.
Oh, interesting.
So early in the relationship, and I'm being transparent here because I smoke weed. So
Thank you.
Early in the relationship when I was smoking, she has this thing. Let me just decline this. So of course I get a call right now that alerts on my laptop. But anyway, so she would do this thing. She would come close to me, and she would like come close but not kiss me, but her nose would touch my cheek. So I took that. I was like, is she smelling me? Is what I'm doing. I'm like, I didn't smoke today. You told me not to smoke around your parents. Why are you doing this to me? Why you're like, I said, you're accusing me of smoking without accusing me.
Oh, interesting. That was all from that motion of her bringing her nose. Okay.
What I realized after asking, because see, I didn't say this. This was all things I said in my mind.
Yep.
Then I realized about a couple months later that was actually a traditional kiss that they do in her country. So rather than kiss each other, they kind of like rub their nose on you or just like kind of give you a little sniff. It's just like, it's a beautiful thing that they do to each other. And then I saw a mom do it to her dad and vice versa. Then I was like, hey, what am I thinking here that she's disrespecting me? So I finally asked her, I said, you don't like when you smell me, right? She's like, smell you? She's like, what are you talking about? And it was like the whole time it was a traditional kiss that was just meant to be a way of showing affection in public without being disrespectful to your elders.
Oh, interesting. Well, and actually speaking of that, when you saw her mother do that, when we have an intercultural relationship, it's not just you and the person, the whole family comes with it. Yeah. So, okay. Well, just explain that reaction you just had right there.
Well, because you can love somebody, and as you walk down the road to seek understanding of who they are, it doesn't mean you won't get angry, because I did get angry a lot at some of the things that were done. I wouldn't say done to me, but I felt excluded from within her family. But again, I had to learn to consider the circumstances of what they had been through. And what I mean by that is, I used to sneak to her house, that things her parents still don't know to this day. So I'm about to get in trouble, but y'all still love me. So, I would sneak over to her house in the middle of the night, and we would do anything to spend time with each other. And what I would tell her was, look, she would get mad with her parents, like furiously mad. And something in me always said, look, babe, don't be mad. I said, if we had kids, we would understand why they're so defensive about us being together. I said, let's take certain things into consideration. Number one, when your dad first moved to America, one of the first things that happened to him was he had actually gotten into an altercation with a group of Black guys in the hood who did something to him and tried to rob him. And then I said, also, you've been also, at one point you almost got robbed by a couple people. And I said, when we go through experiences, we see those people in every experience after. And I said, sometimes it takes another person who looks like that person to come into your life and change your perception of a group of people that you may have typecast into one specific sect. You know what I mean? So I felt it was my job to just be the best version of myself that I could be, to show them that it's bigger than, there's bad people everywhere, every race, every culture, no matter where you go in this world. But to be an example of a good person, and then those color lines or those cultural lines will begin to deteriorate on their own. So that's how I approached our relationship. And now, again, I'm not saying I didn't get mad when certain things were done, when they excluded me or when they didn't want to be seen with me. Instead of approaching it as a sense of disrespect, I took it as a curiosity for me to dig deeper and understand where they were coming from. And now I can't get rid of them. They love me.
Actually, that's funny. We had I want to share one thing and then I'll go ahead and bring my husband on as well. But one thing you bring up is that being married, it's like when someone says, "Oh, I'm not prejudiced. My best friend is white or my best friend is black." Like that just makes me completely immune to prejudice.
Exactly.
And it doesn't. We actually bring those things in. And I can remember a time this was actually, I would go so far as to call it a microaggression. And it just recently happened when we were at Home Depot. But it's this thing where if my husband and I are together, and I didn't realize this at first, but if people were talking to both of us early on in our relationship, people would look at me and say, "Oh, so what does he do?" And I would think I was being polite, like answering the question, until I realized that was pure microaggression. They thought that he didn't speak English, or they thought that he didn't understand. So they were asking me, my answering was like insult to injury, because then I was like affirming that, oh, okay, right. No, I can speak for him, which cannot, absolutely cannot. So
that is the truth. And you can. Yeah, and I think we all get into situations like that where we don't realize that. I mean, it happens to my wife all the time, because even though she's Asian, she gets mistaken for so many other things. So we've been in a situation. She speaks 4 languages, actually. She speaks, so we'll get on the elevator and somebody will say something in Spanish, not realizing she looks Asian.
Sure.
Also speaks Spanish, so she can understand what you're saying, and usually she'll pop off in a second. She's a little spicy Scorpio. So she doesn't take no mess, man. She does not take any mess, and I love her.
I love that. All right. Well, speaking of not speaking for other people, couple things. I want to share Brianna's comment that's so true about words like love having different meanings in different languages. Never thought of that. Also, for anyone who is watching live, I invite you to share comments or ask questions in the comments, actually, wherever you are watching the show. So I'm not scared. I'm just kidding. Remember how much I love you, sweetheart. I'm going to add my husband. Welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody.
Gino Eugenio Bonaventura.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely.
It is always a pleasure. In all the years that I've been together, so it's the first time in the Deanna show.
Oh, wow.
Wait. So after 33 years, I thought it was important for us to move to just a new level of trust.
Lucky, you don't know. I am so touched. I was backstage, and I listened to all this conversation. Say, finally, she is disclosing the truth.
Kara says hi, Eugenio. Well, actually, speaking of the truth, Lucky, when you were talking about the misunderstanding about the and Brina, look at Gino already has like a fan club going here.
Hey.
But so you were talking about cultural misunderstanding, and Eugenio and I have the story the first time I went to Brazil, where we went to dinner at his brother and sister-in-law's house, and they had this gorgeous turkey, and my sister-in-law cuts off the leg and like kind of plops it on my plate. And I remember at the time I was like, I actually took it as an offense, because I'm used to like Thanksgiving, where you slice the white breast and you put that, on your plate, like very carefully. And so here I am thinking like, what, she doesn't like me. It was probably, I don't know, 20 years later where we were having a conversation. We were probably just, eating chicken at home. And Eugenio was like, oh yeah, the leg is the best part. That's why you always give that. Like, it's the best part. So 20 years later, I'm like, this woman was trying to welcome me the best way she could as I was meeting the family.
Oh my God, I have a story similar to that. It's actually one of my close friends. Shout out to Christian Bermudez. I've known him since kindergarten. So one day I go to his house, and he's Dominican. He's half Dominican, half Puerto Rican. So I'm having dinner for the first time at his house. So he comes over to me and he serves me this plate of rice that is burnt. To me, this is burnt rice. So I'm looking, I said, what the, I said, what the and I'm going to disrespect. I said, because I'm black, I want burnt rice. I was like, what is this going on? So I looked at him and I said, bro, I said, everybody's rice looks regular. Mine, he was like, no, brother. He said, he's crying, laughing. He said, in my culture, we call this con. And he said, this is like with. He said, this is the best part of the rice at the bottom where all the seasoning gathers. He said, everybody wants seasoning. And he said, so it's a treat that we're giving it to you because usually my mom and dad will eat that to themselves. And I said, oh, I thought this was the burned. I said, I didn't know what to do. So, I learned that, sometimes we overthink things or we always think we know. And sometimes we're just not asking the right questions or we're not trying to really understand,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I added to that is, when I married Deanna and I participate in some of the Jewish events, and I like all the filter fish and all the stuff, and people hate that. I was like,
I know, I
people,
don't even like the
they
filter fish.
look at me as like, what this guy? Why he's well? First of all, my appetite was always way above. I mean, it's like and I was eating, repeating, and read those, and like it's like they look at me like I'm out of this world. It's like, and I'm enjoying. I was like,
Well, what's interesting about that though is that I became much closer to my Judaism because of marrying someone who was not Jewish. Because we decided before we had children that we would raise our son Luca Jewish. So then I even wrote an article for Interfaith. It was called Interfaith Magazine on how to act Jewish to raise a Jewish child.
No, I have a point on that. She want to secure. She want to secure that I will not pursue or either try to kind of bring him to the way that I grew up. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I have a religion per se, but I mean, I always identify myself with Judaism.
And is that what you felt that I was trying to pursue you? Wait, let me just make sure that okay, shwoo.
Oh yeah.
I just want to make sure that button still works. Oh, how fun. And I just want to say hi to Andre. So Andre actually lived with us. Andre is our nephew who lives in Brazil and was he lived with us for like 8 years. And it's funny just being interfaith.
Us.
Okay. Yeah, he tolerated us. But I remember when he first moved, because he was from another country, we needed to make sure he was in private school. And I still remember enrolling him in Catholic school where all three of us have different last names.
Wow.
Right? I didn't change my name. Andre is, and I just remember going in and talking to like the headmaster going like, no, wait, okay. Like we're married. It's okay. Cause all the different names, but just not really even knowing what to expect. That was really multicultural.
I'm actually glad you brought that up because that was a huge topic with my wife and I about the last name thing. And she spoke to me and she was asking me, she was like, I can't wait to take your last name. And I said, and again, I don't know why I was able to see these things or say these things, but I was like, well, babe, I said, are you sure you want to take my last name? And she was like, why? I was like, well, because I said, let's think about it from your dad's perspective for a second. I said, your dad, most times in life, you don't get to pass the last name as far as the woman, given the last name. I said, so, and your dad has 4 girls. And I said, so to him, in his mind, he's probably losing his legacy or part of his culture. I said, so why don't we just keep both of our last names and we'll figure out a way how we want to design it. But to me, it's not a big deal. I don't need to put a stamp on you to say that you're mine. You know what I mean? You don't need to carry that last name. And I'm totally fine with you keeping your individuality and keeping your family legacy and name moving forward into the future, because I know that's important for everybody in every culture.
Interesting that you brought up that naming, the naming convention, right? So I grew up in a very conservative family. And when I moved to the U.S., I married to Deanna, we kept our own last names and stuff. And one day, one person said, well, you're Mr. Shaw. So I say, no, I kept my mid name. I didn't say, well, it's like, what are we going to say?
Oh my God. Yeah, that happened to me when I called for some of my bills. and they say, "Hey, Mr. Vieng, and I go, "If you could see me, the look on their face. If they called me Mr. Vieng but could see me at the same time, they would probably fall to the floor."
We're going to do a quick, I would call it a break because actually we're going to just quickly do our flash exercise. So this is, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if either of you are familiar with something called interpretive aerobics. I know it's going to be the next big thing. Interpretive aerobics is fitness moves that relate to the theme of what we're doing. And so since our theme is love, today our exercise is going to be a stretch for your medial deltoid. And I hope everyone watching at home will join us. So your shoulders, your deltoids, you've got front, side, and back. They're very complicated. So we're going to stretch that. What I'm going to ask you to do is take your arm and bring it around in front, and then take your other arm underneath it. And kind of caress your shoulder lovingly. Take that hand and bring it behind you. So what you're doing, like love, you're hugging yourself. I love me. I love you. But you should feel a nice stretch down your arm. So then switch to the other side. That arm comes front, under, and stretch.
Oh, this feels really good, actually.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? It reminds me like in 7th grade. You ever have those goofy friends that would stand in the corner of the room like this and pretend like they were like with somebody?
Yeah.
You don't need.
They were actually stretching their deltoids.
I'm gonna hug myself.
There you go. Yes, exactly. A moment of self-love. All right. So I would like to now, we've been talking a lot, and thank you both so much. Actually, just so at the end, I'm just going to make sure I give my husband some time in the top spot there.
Wow. Hey, it's not that often, but I'll take it.
So I want to share something, and I hope that each of us will share something that we've learned in our relationship that actually has learnings for people in the world, because I believe that that's kind of what we're talking about, is everything we've learned living day to day in this intercultural interrelation environment. What's the benefit? And one thing that I learned early on, so when my husband first moved here, again, he did not speak English. So he literally, I think, read the dictionary from cover to cover, like just spent time reading the dictionary. We'd be in conversation. He would use a word and I'd be like, that's not a word in English. That's not a word in English. Then I would look it up. It would be a word in English. And then then of course I had to save face. I'd be like, yeah, just nobody uses that word.
Yeah.
So my lesson though for people is, don't assume that because you don't know what someone's talking about, don't assume that they're wrong. It's on you to actually learn what they're talking about. So that to me was a good lesson from our relationship that I would share, as a benefit to people in the world.
I think that's the truth, because my grandmother used to always say the first 3 letters of assume are who you are if you assume. You know what I mean? So you just can't, we can't think we're smarter than everybody else. And it happens, you know what I mean? I've been guilty of it with my wife, where I've said things or kind of stepped out of place to tell her what I think she should do. When she's not really asking sometimes for my opinion, when she just wants me to actually listen. You know what I mean? So that's a relationship thing.
Well, that's a whole gender thing though, too. My understanding is that also can be gender thing, if people want to fix it.
I have to learn how to, tuck my tail a little bit. And sometimes, she doesn't need the opinion. She just needs a good ear because she just wants to get it out and just express how she's felt. And I think that's for anybody in any culture. We all need an ear sometimes just to listen.
Question is, so have you visited Laos?
No, I haven't visited Laos yet, but it's because it's complicated with her family.
Okay.
Because they escaped Laos back in the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Cambodia. Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated for her, but we are planning our first trip now that things have settled a bit within the year of 2022. So I'm looking forward to that. We're going to Thailand and to Laos as well. But I tell you what I have done. I have eaten all of the Laos food that I can get, because her mother is a brilliant cook. And speaking of cultural it was because of my wife that I started eating vegetables.
Mm.
You know, her mom could put a boot in a pot, and I'm going to sit there and eat it. It's so good the way she cooks everything. And that introduced me into the world of Asian culture and Asian food, which changed my life. And now I'm more of an explorer when it comes to eating. And now I try everything and give it a shot at least once.
The Asian cuisine is fantastic. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
don't personally, I had a chance to visit Thailand. It is the dishes are fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
like, no, I enjoy the Asian cuisine.
Oh, yeah.
But then, so do you the person from Laos who speak Laotian?
Laotian.
Laotian.
Yeah.
So do you speak any?
I mean, I'm the typical person who speaks some of the bad words that shouldn't be said. I can understand.
It's the first things that you learn, right?
Yeah, because it's just a diction thing. So for me, it's a little harder to say certain words, but I can definitely understand. And her mom, sometimes people look at me when her mom is talking to me because she's speaking so fast and in their native tongue. And then I go, okay, mom, I'll go do that. And then people say, what, did you understand? I'm like, yeah, I can't really speak it all the time, but I've learned to understand.
Sure.
Because that's another thing that happens in intercultural relationships. As soon as you hear someone speaking another language, we automatically think someone's talking about you. And I've told my friends in the past, I said, look, if you're not willing to learn the language, then stop assuming that you're the topic of conversation because you're probably thinking too highly of yourself. And people laugh about other things than just you, you know?
Right.
You know, so and sometimes a joke is only funny when they tell it in their language. You know, that's the thing that people don't get. You know, it can, because I heard a joke where they try to translate it in English. And I'm like, oh, I wish I understood the language fully because I know it would be funnier if they told it their way.
Yeah. You know, I think the mother-in-law, the language thing. So I love my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law, bless her heart, she passed away a number of years ago, but she would translate my Portuguese into Portuguese. So I would speak Portuguese and my sister-in-laws would be like, what? And then my mother-in-law, like she spot on had my Portuguese and would translate it for me. My mother-in-law was just amazing. I actually gave her first job. She was very independent. This was after she was 70. But yeah, just a really wonderful woman. And what's also funny, you think intercultural relationship, the first year we were married, actually, we didn't hear from his family for an entire year. So I didn't share the part that we actually met. We eloped 6 months after we met. And this was in 6 months after I picked him up in a bar in Boston. In 1987. So I think my mom had met him, but neither of our parents had met each other. They were like, what the hell? And, you know, his family for almost a year, because that meant he was likely staying in the US. But when we went, I just heard a story from Eugenio like 3 days ago. And I can't tell you how much I love this story. I planned so much what I was going to wear because I'd never met the family. I was so nervous. And I decided to wear this dress that was just full of flowers. It was like a fitted bodice and a big skirt, totally flowered. Not because I thought Brazilians wore bright flowers, but because I loved flowers. So I get off the plane and they were like, oh my God. And then years later, my mother-in-law started wearing flowers. And her daughters were like, why are you doing that? No one wears flowers. And she was like, well, Deanna does. That just got my heart so much.
That is brilliant. Yeah, I've been through stuff like that with my wife's family too, because in the beginning we got together May 25th, 1996. We were in high school at the time, and I already knew that it was difficult for her because they didn't want her to have any relationships because she was doing very well in school. She was, one of the smartest kids. She was always going to class and getting good grades on her way to college. So I explained to her, I was like, look, I understand why they may not want you to be with someone. So every time I would come to her house, I would only go with like a group of her friends from ROTC because she was in the Air Force version of the ROTC doing all the gun flips and stuff. And it was just, they looked at me like, who is this dude that always is here? There's always a different group of friends, but he's always here.
They were on to you.
They were on to me, but not quite. They weren't sure what my relationship was. So we graduated high school, and then I remember on her college graduation day, because we still didn't tell them. So we were almost 6 or 7 years at that time.
Wow.
Yeah, 6, 7 years at the time when she graduated college.
Mhm.
And I remember she walked across to get her diploma, came right up the stage, walked up to her parents, and was like, "This is my boyfriend." She was like, "I finally got my degree. If y'all want to disown me, if y'all want to kick me out, y'all could do it now because I did what y'all said to do. But I want you to know this is the man that I love." So they was like, "Oh, okay." So her dad was like, "Oh, y'all just got together. He's been around." And then the mom goes, "No, 7 years. 7 years. I know. He's always been here 7 years."
He knew Mama was no
Mama
dummy,
knew.
for sure.
And the other funny thing is, sometimes when we go into other relationships with the family, because the family is your second relationship in a relationship.
Yeah.
The person that I expected to treat me the funniest actually treated me the best, which was her grandmother, and may she rest in peace. Her grandmother barely spoke English, but I guess her grandmother could see my spirit. I guess that's the best way to say it.
Nice.
I felt my energy. So whenever I came over, the grandmother would rub my face and she would hold my hands, and she taught me how to use chopsticks for the first time.
Nice.
And that was the first sign for me and her family of love that just didn't know any boundary. Because I know what she had been through. I knew what the family had been through, but she was already seeing past that before anybody else came. And because of her acceptance of me, it trickled down into the rest of the family, where if the elder is accepting him, we need to slow down and just figure out what we need to do to accept him as well. And then, again, after the college introduction off stage and everything else, then everything just fell into place. Not perfectly, but it fell into place.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. And you're right, just about sort of one thing that's really important in what you said is that idea is if we can look beyond like people and actually you can get a sense of someone's essence. So you don't know why you just like someone, and because you can get a sense of their essence. So if you can get rid of judging based on anything else besides just sitting quietly for a minute to get their essence, I think that's great. And actually, I'm going to read. I can't believe it. We're out of time already. So I do want to read one. Well, you've shared a lesson. I don't know, Gina, if you have one last lesson that you would give to people on how your intercultural relationship can, or if you just want to say something good about me, that's okay too. But
in all the show, we've been saying good things about you. The fact that you're integrate with my family so fast. It's so funny that the way that you share your story, like they like you the most nowadays. It was the same thing with Deanna. They took a while to accept, our union, but when they accept it, it's like they ask me how I was treating Deanna. I was like, huh? Oh, hold on a second. I was how the whole thing works. I'm a blood related to you guys. It's like, but it is but you hit right on, like sharing some stories about the keys, the language, the family. It is all about that. So you have to kind of open up yourself to accept another person. Do not assume that it will be the same thing that you have in your surrounding. Yeah, absolutely.
One more thing, if you don't mind.
Oh, please.
In my opinion, the essence of true love is really acceptance. And when you can accept someone, and what I mean by acceptance is not just in the good. You have to accept the bad of a person, because the only way that a person will change any of the things that we think are bad, because sometimes bad is just a perception. You know what I mean? You have to really look at it and then give them an opportunity to be themselves freely. Because sometimes when people be themselves freely around you, they can even see the error in their ways and understand. Sometimes when they hear themselves, they go, "Oh my God, did I just say that, or did I just do that?" And all of the times they don't mean it, but these are repetitive habits that we've grown up with that are embedded in the back of our brains, and it's not always intentional. So if we lead with love and be a little bit more compassionate to others and just try to come from a place of understanding, so much more would be better in this world, and there will be a lot more intercultural relationships throughout the world, well, not just in the carnal sense of this love and getting married, but just in friendships and all across the board.
That is an absolutely beautiful note to end on, because that's what we're hoping for. Absolutely. So thank you both so much for joining us today. We have so much more that we could talk about and so many different topics. So I hope we'll have, actually, you have no idea how big of a new milestone this is in my relationship with my darling husband. I love you, sweetheart.
After 33 years.
I love y'all.
Good to meet you, Lucky.
And Lucky, thank you. Thank you both so much. We will
Thank
see
you,
you next
Deanna.
time.
Thank you
Next
for
week
having
on
me on the show.
Intercultural Spark, we have Amy Wu, who is an award-winning journalist and documentary filmmaker who did a documentary on ag tech. And I'm so excited that we connected with the Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences. So we have 8 high school students who have watched her documentary and that will actually be on the show to ask her questions on how they can succeed, because she's all about building women and people who are historically excluded from agriculture technology and how they can soar. So I hope we'll see you next Thursday at 10 a.m. Thank you, Eugenio. Thank you, Lucky. And see you all next week on Intercultural Spark.
Bye.
Bye.
That was so nice.